How we doing, Jazzle here. I just completed Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 and found it to be a pretty good game. While it's not a perfect game, it was fun to play for a brief time spent on it. It took me just over 6 hours to finish it. In this video, we'll discuss the game's amazing graphics, which are a significant upgrade from the first version. We'll also touch on the audio design and provide a brief summary of the story. We'll focus on the gameplay, which involves a lot of walking and puzzles, and the combat, which is essentially cinematic fight scenes. I have some thoughts about that one. And I'm also going to mention a few things that I didn't like about the game. Ninja Theory spent 4 years developing this game. Although the game was announced with a trailer a prior year in 2019, its development actually started in 2020. The first game, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, was developed by approximately 20 people. Meanwhile, around 80 to 100 people worked on the sequel, Senua Saga Hellblade 2. This game is available on PC, Xbox Series X, and S. I played this game on PC through Game Pass. Hellblade 2 brings us back to the world of Senua, a Celtic warrior who also suffers from psychosis. This time, she's on an adventure into the harsh lands of Viking Iceland. She is driven by a desire to help those who are suffering. However, it seems that the real battle might still be with her own mind, as she grapples with the voices and visions that continue to haunt her. I feel like this version of Senua is a much better fighter. Also, she's much stronger and a lot angrier. Basically, don't mess with her. One of the best features of the game is its graphics. The opening scene in particular shows the game's stunning visual. The water is beautifully rendered. The weather effects like the rain and the storms look almost real. As you walk around the rocky beach, you'll notice the detailed texture on the rocks. I wasn't even playing on high settings. There's even attention to minor details like being able to see individual pebble or rock on the beach. There's also a time when you find yourself inside a cave, which is one of my favorite experiences because I thought it looked really good. I really love the look of the light from the torch illuminating the cave's interior. You'll also notice other light sources and glowing stuff inside the cave, which I found very cool. The facial expressions have definitely improved from the first game, effectively showing Senua's emotions and anger. Senua's movement look realistic, and the character modeling is pretty good, with every detail down to the scars on her arm. When Senua gets hit, you can see where she was cut. The high level of detail is impressive. The acting in this game is exceptional. It's hard to find words to describe how good it was. The camera work in this game is amazing. It's very cinematic. The use of close-ups with a wide aperture creates a blurry background, adding to the cinematic effect. The camera's movements around the scene tells a story on its own, even without any kind of narration behind it. I really love everything about it. I just gotta say, this game is much darker, more brutal, and slightly more graphic. It shows significant amount of blood and a lot of killing, so just beware. While playing the game, I noticed the black bars at the top and bottom of the screen. I understand their purpose is to create a cinematic feel. It's true, they do enhance the cinematic effect, but I feel they waste screen space. I know this feature is common in movies, but I'm unsure about its use in games. I think these bars are acceptable during cutscenes, but perhaps not so much during gameplay. I tried to play this game on high preset with DLSS on, but the frame rates are very inconsistent. I just don't have the most powerful PC for this game. Unfortunately, I had to reduce the settings to medium to maintain a consistent frame rate with DLSS set to quality. This setting was able to give me over 60 FPS consistently. However, even on medium preset, the game remains visually impressive. Moving on to audio. This game is best experienced with headphones. The game even reminds you to wear one. The voice narration from all the voice actors is top-notch, and the environmental sounds are impressive. Inside the cave, you'll encounter terrifying and scary sounds that are truly immersive when experienced through a headphone. The overall sound design is perfect. Like the first game, Senua continues to suffer from psychosis, and you'll hear constant talking in her head. These voices can deceive you, discourage you, or occasionally even motivate you. However, in this game, it seems like she has accepted that they will always be a part of her. The controls for this game is very similar to the first game. Since I just finished the first game before playing the second game, it's kind of nice that I don't have to learn a different control scheme. Puzzle remains the core gameplay mechanics of this game. Identifying specific shapes is the key to progression. However, these shapes are easy to find. I simply sped walk around the map until the game indicates I am near the shape I need to look for. Since the colors are quite different, they are quite visible, making the puzzles easy to solve. Another type of puzzle involves moving a stone from one altar to the main altar. This is pretty straightforward too, although it requires a lot of backtracking. I'll admit it was initially a bit boring, but as I progressed in the story, I found the later puzzles more enjoyable. They weren't very challenging, they were just fine. Another type of puzzle involves lighting up a stone fire pits. When lit, they reveal a new path. These puzzles are not only simple but also look really cool. But there's a problem about this type of puzzle, which I'll talk about later in the video. I'd like to share my thoughts on the easy puzzles on this game. Personally, I like them because I just want to relax after a long day at work. I prefer not spending my limited free time stuck on challenging puzzles that would stop me from progressing in the game. While I understand some players enjoy more complex puzzles, I currently don't have much time for challenges like that at the moment. By the way, I recommend changing your settings to enable toggle for running. This feature lets you press the left bumper once rather than holding it to run or sprint. You'll thank me later. I'm glad that the lore stones are still here. I enjoy listening to the stories that Druth shares. They are entertaining, at least to me. The faces are also back, and discovering them was cool and funny in my experience because it was just a random face you see. When you locate them, it usually reveals a small passage where you can find a tiny tree that also shares stories like Druth. I missed a few of these faces during my initial playthrough. However, since the game is relatively short, I might play it again to locate all the lore stones and faces. This is quite interesting. In the first game, Senua was all alone. It was just her walking around listening to the voices in her head and being told stories by Druth. However, in the sequel, she is accompanied by several supporting characters. I have to be honest, I actually like the supporting characters. The only drawback is that I didn't have enough time to get to know them well. However, they have a new game plus called The Others, in which these supporting characters narrate the game instead of Senua. This gives a player a different perspective which are coming from the other characters. I gotta admit, I truly enjoyed using the photo mode feature. This mode provides everything you need to capture stunning screenshots. You have control over camera movement, manual focus, aperture, and focal distance. They even provide lighting options for optimal lighting. You can even use photo mode during a cutscene and still move the camera. I'm so happy that more games are getting the photo mode feature. The combat in this game is similar to the first one. You can use a fast strike to quickly damage your enemies and heavy strike to break their stances or defenses. The attack feels heavier and slower. I feel like the developers were aiming more for a realistic movements. You can parry in this game and it looks pretty cool. However, it's very challenging to do so because the window is pretty short. After a few hours though, I began to get the hang of it slightly. I do miss the faster movement when Senua parries in the first game and follows up with a spin attack. There's a skill available that slows down enemies, which can be charged by attacking enemies or taking damage. I relied on this skill quite a bit in the later parts of the game. Honestly, it was because I found it difficult to get used to the parrying system. I really enjoy seeing different kinds of enemies in this game, each with unique fighting styles. Some are very fast, others use fire, shields, or even large axes. Some use sand to blind you, and others are simply incredibly strong. And I don't even know how Senua can take hits from all these enemies. By the way, I gotta apologize, but I can't help but compare this game with the first game because it's a sequel. But anyways, in the original game, multiple enemies could spawn at once, attacking whenever they could. However, in Hellblade 2, the combat is more straightforward as you only fight one enemy at a time. Personally, I found the combat in the first game more engaging as it kept me on my toes due to potential enemies spawning behind me. I read a few things about the mechanics of this game, and I think the developers were more focused in giving us a more cinematic fight scenes. Now let's talk about the things I didn't like about the game. There are sequences in the game where you need to crawl under something. These sequences appear like cutscenes but still require player input to progress. This happened a few times in the game. While I understand their narrative purpose, showing Senua's struggles and how she's trying to overcome something, they are quite long. I wish there was an option to skip them. Now, let's talk about that stone fire pit problem I was talking about earlier. During the game, I encountered moments when my frame rate would drop from over 60 FPS to less than 10 FPS. This usually occurred when I lit one of those stone fire pits. I tried to fix it by temporarily changing my graphic settings to low for a few seconds, then switching them back to medium preset. This worked a little bit, but often I ended up needing to restart my game. I'm not really sure why it happens, but maybe the effects for it is just too much for my system that it can't handle it. I don't really have the most powerful PC. However, it was just disappointing every time I had to restart the game. One aspect I didn't touch on in the combat section is confronting the giant in this game. These giants are terrifying, destructive, and make life miserable for people. I didn't talk about this from the combat section because unfortunately, fighting these giants is not very enjoyable. I don't think I really fought them. I just ran around until I reached whatever it was I needed to reach, and then that's it. The last thing I want to mention is that I felt the game was a bit rushed, particularly after the first giant's battle. Until that moment, the story's pacing seemed okay. Then after the first major fight with the giant, it felt very rushed. I wanted more from the story, and I wish I had more time with the other characters. Also, it appears as if Senua's interaction with these characters happened off-screen, especially when the game transitions to a new location. The reason why I say this is because each time the game transitions to a new location, Senua and the other character seems a bit closer. In conclusion, despite the things I didn't like about the game, I would still recommend this game. The storyline is engaging, and I like the fact that Senua gets to engage with other people, which were lacking in the first game. While I found the combat a bit of a downgrade compared to the original, I thought it was still pretty fun. I mean, I enjoy trying to parry enemies even though I failed a lot. The visuals in this game are stunning. If you decide to give it a try, I strongly recommend playing this with headphones to fully immerse yourself in the game. The game's length at 6 to 7 hours is alright for me. While I wish there were more to the story, I don't mind a shorter game because my job in school keeps me quite busy. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day.